All right, I'm continuing with the fantasy landscape. So I've brought all my pieces in, I've kind of placed them, I have them roughly cut out. Now I want to take their opacities back to 100%. And then just like with the cartoon jumble, I'm going to start blending them together a little bit, one by one. And so I'll start turning off and I'll work from the background forward. So these are my first two. And how can I get a nice transition here within my area? And you can see that that's my sketch area where the guide is. So this won't be part of it. But you can see that also I need more sky. So there's a few things I can do. I can take this first reference, and of course I can transform it. And I can hold down Shift, and I can make it bigger like that. But I wanted the idea of kind of a floating, cloudy mountain back there with sky just extending. So I might also just stretch it, not hold down Shift. And because these are organic shapes, not man-made shapes, stretching it shouldn't make it look less realistic necessarily. Or I can decide that I need more reference and I need to bring in sky. I have this nice blue sky here, and maybe I can just run that behind it. Like so. And again, I'll just roughly cut out a big shape of sky. Make sure I get this little watermark out of there. So a lot of this is going to be about refining our selections. And I want to move that behind everything. So that now I have this blue sky. So now these are the two I'm transitioning. And so if I'm transitioning these two within my sketch space, there's a few ways I can do that. I could very carefully select out just these mountains, right? But to do that with just the Lasso Tool will be pretty difficult. So if I move that layer, make sure it's 100%, we're going to use some specialized selection tools now. The one we've used a little bit before is the magic wand, which on its default tolerance is 32. I have it set for contiguous, and I can kind of click around, and you see how it cuts out all the white and can select that. Or if I have it contiguous unchecked, it will select all of that pixel color everywhere in the image, so like the light blue everywhere it occurs. But that's not all that useful. Hit Command D to deselect. Another tool I might use is in the same drawer with the magic wand. It's the quick selection tool. And I like to use it on this setting, which is additive. And basically you paint roughly, and it will try to fill in all the similar pixels. And as you add more paint, it will keep adding to the selection. And it can be okay, but you can see how it's cutting into the mountain quite a bit. So if I delete, I'll lose chunks of the mountain that otherwise I wouldn't lose, like these little peaks and valleys. So I like to be pretty targeted about it. And so what I'm going to do is use the magic wand and make my tolerance a little bit more specific, maybe something more like 12 with contiguous turned on. And I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to click, and then I'm going to add to what I'm clicking, add to this selection by holding down the Shift key with magic wand. You can also do this with the lasso. So if I hold down Shift, you'll see there's a little plus sign that gets added to it. And I can add these really, really precise with a low tolerance selections. So I get a better cutout of that mountain range. Whoops. And I'm just holding down spacebar and moving through, because zooming in is very helpful when you're trying this. Now it's important that I have contiguous checked, otherwise all of these grays and whites that are in the mountains would also be selected. Whoops. I keep holding down Command instead of spacebar. I don't want that. Now it's okay if you get little fragments left, and you'll see what I mean when I am done with this. But I'm just not a huge fan of the quick selection tool because fine art is seldomly done quickly. Okay, so now I have that selection. I haven't done anything with it. Now I change to another selection tool, the Lasso Tool, and I hold down Shift, and I do a rough lasso of everything above those mountains. Like that. And now those are added into the selection. The problem is I want the clouds here, and I want the clouds over here. So how do I subtract from a selection? Well, instead of holding down Shift, you hold down Option. And the Alt Option button will subtract from your selection. And I can say, I want all of that. And that allows me to delete away with quite a bit of precision just that part of the mountain range. Those clouds underneath. Then I have this back layer I can play with. I can just use the Move tool, of course. Place it in. Or I can decide that I want that mountain range to extend and continue. But now comes the difference of why is this so contrasted and this so pale? And so we'll get into that, but what we're going to do is make the lighting match. But right now I'm not going to worry about that so much. I'm just going to line up kind of that mountain's edge to there. And now I have two layers that are good. So I'm going to save my work and go to the next layer. And how do I blend this with what I've already done? So this is a great example of where I can use that magic wand tool with a low tolerance again. Tolerance of 12, contiguous, holding down Shift. You get a really accurate cutout of that mountain. So we start with hard edges, and then we're going to be finishing it off with soft edges. And even though I'm deleting and cutting away from these references within the boundaries of my sketch, within my planned format, I haven't lost that content permanently because I still have the full smart layer of that reference available to me. Now, does this looks high contrast and fully colorful, and you'll notice even with the magic wand, there's that slight blue ridge there, which will need to be fine-tuned. But this doesn't match color and lighting-wise with this yet, and we'll learn how to fix that later. Right now I'm just doing fine cutout of these puzzle pieces. So now I move to the next one. And I love these organic objects because they're fun to cut out and it's pretty accurate. And I continue. And I try to move fairly quickly, but I'm also mindful if I'm losing something that I might want. Like I want that orange ridge. I want to be able to blend that in. Even this hole, these holes in the rocks I need to select. And you can hit Command Z if you go too far, or you can hit, select with the Option button to subtract it if you accidentally select somewhere you don't want to. And it's kind of like finding just the right areas to cut out. I feel almost surgical doing this. which pixels do I want, which are cancers. Now notice I'm not trying to get all of this stuff, because once I've given myself a little halo around my selection, then I can just use the regular lasso tool and capture everything else pretty easily. But there's a lot of different colors, a lot of variation here. And that's why the magic wand tool is preferred. If I use the quick selection tool here, it would have grouped all of this in with the dark sky. I would have lost a lot of that rock that I'd have to later go out and deselect. Whereas with this really tight tolerance, and sometimes I have to go down to a tolerance of only 2, but here 12 is working pretty well. It can be really, really sensitive when I need it to be. And it can do it relatively quickly. And I'm holding down Shift. You see that plus sign next to my magic wand. Now the nice thing about raster images, pixel-based images, is that I don't need a perfect selection. I just need pixels that give me the illusion. So you can zoom in and more and get tighter and tighter pixels. But at the end of the day, it's not about perfect cleanliness. It's about the illusion working at the resolution you're printing it at. So we're going to make it look as good as we can, but we're not going to use like the pen tool and clipping masks to be obsessive about it. Okay, so now I have that selection. I could hit delete right now, and that's fine. Or I can hold down Shift with the regular lasso tool and then just grab all of this other stuff that's on the outside. And I might miss little things, but as long as I don't cut into the rock, I'm okay. And I can do it in stages. As long as I have Shift held down, it will keep adding to my selection. And if I mess up and select away a little too much, I hold down Option and I can subtract from my selection. And then I can delete. And again, the lighting and the coloring isn't quite matching yet. I don't need to worry about that yet. I have a slight halo. And then around this, I might just do a rough cut with the lasso. So I preserve a lot of that overlap. And this might be where I use a soft eraser to blend and find that edge that works. Because the values are so close. And then once I've softened the edge, I don't want my rocks to have soft edges, but I want these transitions to between just organic kind of coverage. Then I can even take the opacity of that eraser down and start kind of transitioning in smaller steps between elements. Like that. And of course, you can go back in your history if you think you take it too far. All right, so I've got that. Now, some big foregrounds. They get bigger and more important on the foreground.